Hi class, welcome to week 3. So this last week we went over teams. You guys created some teams. So those are set. You guys also did a Flipgrid discussion on teamwork. You're going to probably want to review that Flipgrid again as you're working on your assignments for this week. So as we are getting into week 3, you guys are going to start working with your teams and developing team contracts. That's where that Flipgrid is going to come into play, where you can look at some of the struggles that have happened with teams previously, as well as what are some of the tools you can use so that you can be successful working in a team this term. So assignments, when we're looking at week 3, let me just scroll down here quick. There are several readings in your textbook, as well as a couple videos to watch. We're going to start looking at the first segment of the business Canvas, customer segmentation. So this week I have you doing a couple readings, and then next week you'll read a few more things related to customer segmentation. This tends to be a struggling area for our students each term. So we're going to kind of spread it over 2 weeks. I know you've covered some of this potentially before in a Principles of Marketing course or your Customer Growth Strategies course, but we really need to get this area fine-tuned because all the other areas of the Canvas are going to relate back to this customer segment. So you're going to start by reading some material this week related to customer segmentation and how you break your customers up. That will be used in week 4 when your team develops your customer segment for your Canvas. There's also a reading about team contracts and why they're important to be very detailed. So I want you to read through that and implement that into your contracts this week. There's 2 assignments that you'll have. One is to complete your teamwork charter, or I like to call it your team contract. You'll submit one for the team, and only one person from the team needs to submit it. It's a group submission portal, so when one person submits it, it'll show for everyone. With your team charter, if they're not fully complete or you're missing some components or some expectations that your team should highlight as you're working together, I will send those back to you with a grade of a 0. And this is one of those assignments that I'm actually going to let you redo until you get it fully complete. And that's simply because I need you guys really to spell out the details, the expectations that you have for your teammates before we start this project. And then there's going to be a quiz to complete over customer segmentation. It's a 10-point quiz that you will have. So as you scroll down here, you will see the teams are right here. I pulled them right off your guys' wiki. One thing you guys should note that while you're working on this project, you really want to make sure that you're selecting an entrepreneur or a smaller company. Some of you have wrote on the wiki that you want to do a larger business. I actually won't recommend it. Just for the scope of this project, there's too many different revenue streams, too many customer segments, too many areas of the business generally, that it becomes a little challenging to really focus in and learn about each area of the Canvas because you spend so much time researching. And initially, this first focus is really on learning what each area of the Canvas is and how they interrelate. So just take that into consideration. If you guys are questioning if it's a good company or not, just shoot me an email and we can discuss that. One thing I really want to stress this week is be accountable to your team. We've all been on bad teams in the past, and it's not fair to the rest of your team if you're not committed to putting in that group effort and making that team work. So if your teammates email you, you need to have a reasonable turnaround time on responding to them. Just like if you guys email me, you pretty much expect that I'm going to respond to you within 24 to 48 hours. If not, you guys get pretty upset. So you should have the same expectations, if not shorter, for your teammates, depending upon which deadlines you guys set. So really make sure you're committed to your teams and putting in your teamwork. As you guys are developing your team contracts this week, I'll scroll down here a little bit just because I want you to see them. There are multiple questions that you need to consider in your team contract. So what are your goals? What are your expectations for your team? How is your team going to communicate with one another virtually? How fast of a turnaround do you expect in communication? What type of communication are you going to do? What tools are your teams going to use to work together? How's your team going to function? When are you going to turn in assignments to the group? Who's going to turn in assignments? How are you going to delegate work each week? Who's going to be responsible for what? Are you going to rotate through those positions? All of those things should be outlined in your team contract. Again, if they're not, I'm going to send the contract back, because ultimately, if there are issues or conflict in the teams, I'm going to go back to your contract and say, here's what we outlined as expectations, and XYZ isn't meeting these expectations. What can we do to change that? Or do you need to, basically, in the real world, you'd be written up. So do you need to be written up for the incident? If that continues, you guys get to decide what is the process for firing a member of your team. You can actually fire someone if they're not communicating, doing their work, they're not accountable to the team, if they don't meet the expectations outlined in your team contract. After, generally it's a 3-strike rule, they can be removed from the team. Unfortunately, if you do get fired from the team, you have to do the project by yourself, and you lose the team evaluation points. At the end of the term, you guys will have a team evaluation. Every member of the team and yourself will fill out the team eval and rank and score each of your teammates. So in your contract, you could outline how you would gain or lose points in the various different areas. That's perfectly acceptable. It's really up to you guys on how you want to do that. I know life happens too and people get busy, but that's not an excuse to not communicate with your team and not get your work done. Life is going to happen. It happens everywhere, and you still have to do your job. Your homework is your job, so you have to get it done. And that's where you need to be accountable to your team each week. For those of you who haven't reviewed the case company assignment, I also put that in here this week, so you can see the case company assignment. This is the overview, like the large document that explains the assignment in great detail. Previously, this was under course materials, but I stuck it in the weekly folder too. So really, you guys are creating a business canvas and then a summary assignment. Because the canvas is just the 9 building blocks, you can't put a whole lot of information on that canvas. We need to explain it a little bit more, and you're going to need to back everything with research. So each week you'll have a section of the canvas, possibly 2 that you're completing with your team. And then each individual on the team will do their own written summary. So while this is a team project, it's also an individual project. With that being said, you may want to set a due date in the middle of the week that your team finishes the canvas to allow your teammates to write their written summary. Because if you're waiting until Sunday, even Saturday, that's not going to give you a lot of time to cite your sources and write your written summary for that section for the week. So take that into consideration as to what your deadlines are going to be, because while this is a team project, it's also individual. This rubric is rather large because it includes all 9 segments of the canvas. So you can see all of the criteria. There are, I want to say there's 40. Yeah, there's 46 areas. So the criteria is pretty intense when you do the final eval on each section that you're completing, but I also broke this down by section. So if you are in your assignment folder, there is a folder. Let's see how long it wants to load. There is a folder, you guys can't see them all. But down here, case company project. I actually pulled out the first 3 sections that you guys are working on. So customer segmentation will take place next week after you guys have established your team contract and your group norms. But this breaks out just the customer segment portion. So you can see it kind of explains it in detail. There's some questions that you'll have to answer or consider as you're completing your canvas. And then the grading rubric is here. So you're going to identify your customer market segmentation strategy. You're going to do 4 customer segments that the businesses focus on, 3 characteristics for each market segment. So because there's 4, that one's on there 4 times. Explain the needs and wants of each of those 4 segments. similarities and difference between those, potential size of the market identified. So you're going to have to look at some demographic information. There's a couple sources that will be available in next week folder, and then some of your readings has some potential sites that you might look at for that as well. But you're going to need to figure out what is the size of the market for that business that you're in. What does the industry look like? You need to follow the written assignment guidelines, and you need a minimum of 2 outside sources used for your written summary. So this written summary, this top portion that you guys will turn in at the end of week 4, is what the individual does. The Canvas, is what you guys do as a team. But ironically, you need to look at all of this information in order to fill out your Canvas too. So it's kind of twofold. But you could just do bullet point notes. So that's just kind of an overview. If you guys want to look ahead at each section, you can go out and do that. But this week is really about teamwork, getting those contracts created. You're going to take a little quiz over customer segmentation. You'll do some more ratings next week on customer segmentation, and then you'll get into that first customer segment PAT. So this week, it's a little lighter on the homework, and that's simply because it's the first week of figuring out teams, working together, contacting one another, and that takes some time in that initial norming stage. So there's not a lot of individual homework just because I want you guys to really connect. So please remember, be accountable to your team. You know, the individual commitment to a group effort, that's what makes a team work. It makes a company work, society, civilization in general work. If you're not accountable, you don't have that commitment to the group, it's not going to function well, and you have to function well. This course, most people after this will take their business capstone course, and you put together an 80-page business plan when you get all your artifacts put together. That's on average. Some are a little smaller, some are a little larger. If you can't function in a team on the smaller scale, it's going to make next semester even more challenging. So you need to be in teams. You need to work together. It's how all businesses function. You have some type of team aspect, so it's going to be key. So work together, get through it, get together your team contract. As you guys submit them throughout the week, I will be sending back feedback until you've included all areas. So have a great week. If you guys have any questions, let me know.